But what we're looking at today, we're looking at systems of equations word problems. This is like what we were looking at the end of the first quarter. If you remember, we did like substitution and the elimination method. The first thing then the first method we looked at, remember, we would graph our two lines and see where they crossed. We're going to kind of use Desmos to kind of help us solve them like that today. But since we're looking at word problems, we got to be able to set them up as a system of equations. So there's really three steps we're going to do today. We're going to define our variables, like we're going to just like figure out what our x and y are going to represent. And this step is really important because when you're getting your answers with your word problems, like I don't want to just see like x equals 2, y equals 3. I want you to be like, you have 2 of these and 3 of those. Like I want you to tell me what those numbers actually mean given the problem. So if you define your variables, that'll help you a lot with that. Step 2, we're going to set up, or we're going to pull out information from the question to make 2 equations, aka a system of equation. And then step 3, once you've got your equations, you're going to solve it using elimination, substitution, or what I'm going to demonstrate today is how you can solve them by graphing, and we're going to use Desmos.com to help us with this. So let's look at our first problem. Let's kind of walk through this one. I'll kind of walk you through this one, and then maybe on the second one, I'll kind of ask you guys some questions, see if you can kind of help me get it set up. So the first thing we need to do is read the question. So example 1, oops, we got Robert. Just mark that quick. All right, so this problem, Kevin would like to buy 10 bouquets. The standard bouquet costs $7 and the deluxe bouquet costs $12. He can only afford to spend $100. How many of each type can he buy? So when you're doing your step 1 and you're setting up your variables, like we're always going to have an x and a y. So we want to kind of decide what are the 2 things we're trying to figure out in this problem, or like what are the 2 types of things we're looking at. The last question usually gives you kind of like a huge hint. It says how many of each type can he buy. So we're looking at how many of certain things. So there's 2 things he's buying if we look at this problem. And if I know it's hard like on a computer, but a lot of times it's helpful to highlight or underline, but we have this standard bouquet and we have this deluxe bouquet. So if we read this last question, we want to know how many of each type. So we're talking about the number of these, because some problems you might be talking about price. Some problems you might be talking about how many of things you have or got or whatever it might be talking about. So I usually go in the order of the problem, but I'm going to let x be the number. Oops, let me do the pencil. It's going to be the number of standard bouquets. And feel free to abbreviate these as you go through. I'm going to write it all out, but like I said, if you wanted to like abbreviate standard, or I don't know, put like SB for standard bouquet. I mean, as long as it's like someone you think like looking at it could figure out what it means, I'm happy with that. So then the second variable we're looking at is the number of deluxe bouquets, because these are the 2 things we're trying to find. How many of each type of these bouquets did he buy? So that is step 1. That's what I mean by defining our variables. We want to make sure we state what x is and what y is. This will help us once we get our answer to kind of put it into words. Step 2, we got to get our 2 equations. So I'm just going to label it equation 1, equation 2. So I'm going to erase my highlight so it just doesn't get too crazy. But we want to look at the problem. I think it's usually easier if you can find your totals, or like anywhere it's talking about like something it would equal. So like the first thing I see, like my eyes are drawn to, Kevin would like to buy 10 bouquets. He's going to buy 10 bouquets altogether. So one of my equations is going to equal 10. So what does 10 represent? That represents the number of bouquets together. So that's the number of standard and deluxe. So that would be X, oops, plus Y. Okay, let me just X plus Y equals 10. Because, for example, you could have 2 standard bouquets and 8 deluxe bouquets. We don't know what X and Y are, but that's our first equation. It's about the quantity, about how many of the things he's going to buy. The next thing I noticed the problem, it's talking about the price. Maybe I'll use a different color. So like a standard So a standard bouquet is $7. A deluxe bouquet is $12. And then they tell us like his total amount of money. So my second equation is going to equal $100. Usually we don't put the dollar sign. But we're talking about the price of these objects. So a standard bouquet is $7. Remember, that's our X. Like X is the number of standard bouquets. So it would be 7X plus the cost of a deluxe bouquet is 12Y. So these are my two equations, and we'll see if you can kind of set these up, but this is kind of like the hard part is like, can we get to here? Because for step 3, we're gonna solve this. So you could do like elimination, you could do substitution, but we're gonna use Desmos today. So I'm gonna snippet these equations because if you don't have these written down, but here, let me share. Make sure I'm not on the grades. Okay. Let me share my computer screen. So these were the equations we got. So we're going to go to desmos.com. We're going to click on the graphing calculator. And we're going to graph these one at a time. So I'm going to type this top equation. So X plus Y equals 10. And then make sure you click like a box below. Then I'm going to graph the second one. So 7X plus 12Y equals 100. And remember, with systems of equations, we want to see where the lines intersect. So I mean, I can kind of actually see it right here, but sometimes it's helpful if you zoom out or if you click and you drag to kind of move your image, but it's pretty clear now, especially it crosses here. So if you just click on it, it'll pop up in Desmos. Like you'll see it's like a gray dot, but if you click or hover over it, it'll tell you our answer. So our answer is 4, 6. So I'm going to pull up my iPad screen really quick. So give me a second. But from Desmos, I saw that my answer was 4, 6. Remember, this is my X, this is my Y. So some teachers will have you write a complete sentence, but I'm happy if you just tell me what this means. So what this means is, remember, X is the number of standard bouquets. So there were 4 standard bouquets and there were 6 deluxe bouquets. So that's what he spent his money on. That's how he spent $100. He got 4 standard and he got 6 deluxe bouquets, and this adds up to a total of 10. So this would meet both of those equations we set up. Any questions? All right, so our second problem, we have a group of 3 adults and 10 students paid $102 for a cavern tour. Another group of 3 adults and 7 students paid $84 for the tour. Find the admission price for an adult ticket and a student ticket. Oh, that's actually, I misread this last period. They actually, so, so our first step is, like I said, we want to define our 2 variables. So One piece of advice, I mean, it's not always going to be true, but in a lot of problems, they tell you what you're going to find or what they want you to find in the last sentence. So if you look at the last sentence, usually that's where they're going to tell you what they want. Not always, but most of the time, that's probably going to be true. So they want us to find the admission price for an adult ticket and a student ticket. So one thing to notice though is we're interested in the price. So we're not worried about how many in this problem, we're worried about how much it costs. So I usually go in the order of the question. So I'm gonna let X be the cost of an adult ticket. And I'm gonna let Y be the cost of a student ticket. Okay, so that's what we're trying to find. We're trying to find the cost of an adult ticket, the cost of a student ticket. So I'm gonna just so it doesn't get too crazy with the highlighting. So that's our first step. I'm gonna highlight a couple things in this problem. I wanna see if you can come up with your two equations. So one of your equations you should be able to pull out of what it says here. Oops. Let me just try and highlight it without it being wavy. And then your second equation should come from what it says here. So take a second, see if you can come up with what your two equations would be based on this. And if you want to put it in the Zoom chat, if you want me to check, I'll do that. If not, so with these two equations, I'm gonna snippet them. I know you can't see me. I mean, obviously, hopefully you would have these written down, like if you were working it out. But so I'm gonna stop sharing my iPad. I'm gonna pull up my computer screen. So let me go back to Desmos. I'm gonna delete these old ones. And we're gonna plot these two new equations. So our first one is gonna be 3x plus 10y equals 102. And then just press enter or click for the box below. So it's 3x plus 7y equals 84. Yep, okay. So sometimes it's hard to see, like where they cross. It actually crosses here, but sometimes it's hard to see. And yours might look different because I was kind of zoomed out for the last problem. You might look more like, you might not even be able to see, but click like the minus button until you can clearly see where they cross. Like it crosses somewhere around here. If you just click on the line, so you'll see a gray dot, or if you click on it, it turns black, but this is where they cross. And you can even like sometimes zoom and click and drag to kind of see it better, but our answer is going to be 14 comma 6. So let me pull up my the problem again. So we just need to say what that means. So I'm just going to, so for step 3, we use Desmos to solve. You also could use like elimination. Like this problem, actually, you could like subtract if you remember, like you would get your x's to cancel, and then you could solve for your y if you remember doing that. But we got our answer was 14 comma 6. Remember, this is our x, this is our y. So just based on what we defined above, well, x was the cost of an adult ticket. So what we just found is an adult ticket is $14. A student ticket is $6. So, but I want you to make like like you're gonna have a couple questions in Delta Math. They're gonna make you put like the numbers by what they mean, but like it's important when you do a word problem, like you kind of want to write your answer in terms of what it actually means, like in terms of like the context of what you're talking about. So this would be your answer. So these are a couple examples of what you'll be seeing in Delta Math. You're going to have 2 questions in Delta Math. I'll show you them right now. If you want to look at them, we've got about a little under 10 minutes. But this will be your assignment for tomorrow during our asynchronous